Nathaniel Harper opened his eyes in the dark and heard his own family planning his funeral. Every muscle screamed at him to move to shout that he was still alive. But he lay dead, still jaw-locked, and listened to the people he trusted divide his land before his body was even cold. Only one soul in that house knew he was awake. A maid. And what she did next broke every rule she'd ever been taught. If you still believe loyalty means something, subscribe and stay with me to the very end. Comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The last thing Nathaniel Harper heard before the world tilted was a sentence that didn't belong in any honest man's mouth. The estate changes hands within the week. He won't last the summer. He'd reined in his horse behind the old grain barn, meaning only to check the water line that ran dry every July. He never meant to hear it. The voice came low and easy through the warped boards, the way a man speaks when he believes no one of consequence is near. Nathaniel sat frozen in the saddle. He knew that voice. He'd heard it at his own supper table 100 times. "And the wife?" a second man asked. "She'll sign whatever's put in front of her once he's gone. Grief makes fools of women." Nathaniel's hand tightened on the reins until the leather bit his palm. He was a man of 45 who had ridden through cannon smoke without flinching, and yet his chest went tight as a drum. He tried to place the second voice and couldn't. The blood was roaring too loud in his ears. He turned the horse. He would swear afterward he didn't remember falling. One moment the sky was where it belonged, and the next the ground came up to meet him, hard and sudden, and a white pain split the back of his skull. He heard someone shout. He heard boots. And then he heard nothing at all. They carried him home on a flatbed cart, and by the time it rattled up the long drive to the house, half the county already believed Nathaniel Harper was a dead man. Dr. Jonathan Pierce arrived within the hour, a heavy-set man of 56 who had buried more of his neighbors than he cared to count. He worked over Nathaniel a long while, pressing at his skull, holding a candle to his eyes, listening at his chest. When he finally straightened his face, gave nothing away, which was its own kind of answer. "Well?" Samuel Harper stood in the doorway with his hat still in his hands. He was Nathaniel's cousin, 47, and he had not once come to the house in 3 years without being asked. "Speak plain, doctor. This family don't need coddling." "He's alive," Pierce said. "The Lord alone knows why. A fall like that ought to have finished him. But he ain't woke. No, and I'll not lie to you, Samuel, men who go into a sleep like this after a blow to the head, they don't often come out of it. If he lasts the week, it'll be a mercy or a torment, and I couldn't tell you which." Samuel bowed his head, as though the news grieved him. "Poor Nathaniel," he murmured. Poor Nathaniel." From the far corner of the room where she had been standing quiet as a shadow with a basin of water in her hands, a young maid watched Samuel's face. Her name was Abigail Turner. She was 21, plain-featured and quick-eyed, and she had served in that house long enough to know the difference between a man who was mourning and a man who was measuring. Samuel Harper was measuring. Abigail. It was Caroline Harper who spoke, Nathaniel's wife, 38, her voice steady in a way that unsettled the whole room. She had not wept once. "Set the basin by the bed and go tend the kitchen. Dr. Pierce and I have matters to discuss." "Yes, ma'am." Abigail set the basin down. But at the door she glanced back. She couldn't have said why, and for the length of a single breath she thought she saw Nathaniel Harper's eyelids flicker. She told herself she imagined it. She did not imagine it. Nathaniel had come back to himself somewhere on that rattling cart. His head a ringing bell, and in the half-dark of returning sense, he had made himself a promise he would give no sign. Not yet. Not until he knew who had stood behind that barn wall and spoken of him as a corpse in waiting. So he lay there through Pierce's poking and Samuel's false grieving, still as stone breathing, slow and shallow, and he listened. He listened as the doctor left. He listened as Caroline lingered. And he listened that first long night when the house had gone quiet, and he believed himself alone, until he heard the soft scrape of the door, and then careful footsteps, and then the small held breath of someone who has crept in where she does not belong. Nathaniel kept his eyes shut. His whole body was a coiled spring. The footsteps came to the side of the bed. A hand, small work roughened, settled the blanket higher on his chest, the way you'd tuck in a child. And then a voice so low, it was barely a voice at all, whispered, "I saw you, sir." His heart lurched. He did not move. "I saw your eyes. In the door when the doctor said you'd not likely wake." A pause. He could hear her swallow. "You're awake right now. I know you are." Every instinct told him to keep pretending. But there was something in the way the girl said it, not triumphant, not afraid, just steady and certain, that made him open his eyes. Abigail Turner nearly dropped her candle. They stared at one another in the dark, the master of the house and the maid who scrubbed his floors, and for a moment neither of them breathed. "Don't," Nathaniel rasped. It hurt to speak. "Don't call for anyone." "Sir, you're alive. Thank God. I'll fetch the—" "No." His hand shot out and caught her wrist. She flinched but didn't cry out. "You'll fetch no one. You'll say nothing, to anyone. Do you understand me, girl?" "I don't understand anything, sir." "No," he agreed grimly. "That makes two of us." He let go of her wrist. His breath came ragged. "What's your name?" "Abigail, sir. Abigail Turner." "How long have you served this house, Abigail Turner?" 3 years come August." "Then you know it. You know who comes and goes. You know whose smiles are real and whose ain't." He tried to lift his head, and the room spun, and he let it fall back. "Somebody in this county wants me dead, Abigail. I heard it with my own ears not an hour before I fell. And when a dead man wakes up, the smart thing, the only thing, is to stay dead a while longer. Long enough to see who comes to feast." Abigail's candle trembled. "You mean to go on letting them think—" "I mean to lie in this bed like a corpse and let every rat in this house show its face." "But Mrs. Harper, she's grieving, sir. She's—" Something crossed Nathaniel's face then, quick and dark. "Is she?" he said. It was not a question. Abigail fell silent. "Here is what you'll do." His voice dropped lower still. "You'll tend me, same as you'd tend any dying man. You'll say nothing of my eyes, nothing of my words, not to the doctor, not to my wife, not to God himself if he asks. You do that, and I'll not forget it. I've a long memory, girl, for loyalty, and for its opposite both." He fixed her with a stare that had once made grown men step back. "Can you carry a secret this heavy?" Abigail Turner was 1 in 20 and had never in her life held anything that mattered. Her hands were still shaking, but she lifted her chin. "I can carry it, sir," she said. "I reckon I can carry it further than you'd think." Nathaniel Harper studied her a long moment. Then, for the first time since he'd heard those words behind the barn, something in him eased. "Good," he said, and he closed his eyes. The house was different by morning. Abigail felt it the instant she came down to the kitchen. There was a lightness in the halls that had no business being there, a house that had been told its master was dying and had somehow grown cheerful. She heard it in the way Samuel Harper called for his breakfast, as though the table were already his. "Coffee, girl, and none of that thin stuff. If I'm to run this place, I'll run it on decent coffee." Abigail set the cup down without a word. "You've a sour look about you." Samuel leaned back in his chair, studying her the way a man studies a horse he's thinking of buying. "You'd do well to lose it. Things are changing under this roof. Those that change with them get on. Those that don't." He spread his hands. "Well, they find other roofs." "Mr. Harper ain't in the ground yet, sir," Abigail said quietly. Samuel's smile didn't waver, but something behind his eyes went cold and flat. "No," he agreed. "He ain't. But we must be practical, mustn't we? A great estate can't run itself off a sleeping man's good wishes. Somebody's got to take the reins. Family's got to protect family." He sipped his coffee. "Remember that, girl? When the time comes, remember who protected this family." Upstairs, Nathaniel Harper lay listening to the muffled rise and fall of his cousin's voice through the floorboards, and though he could not make out the words, he did not need to. He had heard enough behind the barn. Family's got to protect family. He kept his eyes shut and he waited. Caroline came to him twice a day. That was the thing Nathaniel could not fit into place, the piece that kept turning wrong in his hands. If his wife were the one waiting for him to die and God help him, part of him had wondered it in the dark, then why did she sit at his bedside each morning and each evening holding his slack hand in both of hers, saying nothing, her thumb moving over his knuckles like she was trying to rub warmth back into stone? "You stubborn man," she said once so softly he almost missed it. "You'd better not leave me with all of it. Do you hear me, Nathaniel? Not all of it. It's too much for one pair of hands." All of it. All of what? He nearly opened his eyes then. He nearly broke his own game to ask her. But he thought of the second voice behind the barn: she'll sign whatever's put in front of her once he's gone. And he lay still, and he hated himself a little for it. Then, on the third day, Caroline did something that stopped Abigail cold. Abigail was carrying linens down the back stair when she saw her mistress at the front door dressed for travel, a small locked case in her gloved hand. Caroline Harper looked left and looked right, the careful look of a woman who does not wish to be seen. Then she slipped out to the waiting trap and told the driver in a voice pitched low, "The road to town, and you'll not mention this to Mr. Samuel, not a word." The trap rattled off. Abigail stood at the top of the stair with an armful of linen and a cold weight growing in her stomach. A grieving wife did not sneak from her husband's deathbed with a locked case and a secret. A grieving wife did not tell the driver to hide her going. She thought of Nathaniel's words, "You know whose smiles are real and whose ain't," and for the first time, she did not know. She did not know at all. When she brought Nathaniel his evening broth, she set it down and knelt close and whispered everything she'd seen: the case, the secret trip the driver sworn to silence. Nathaniel's eyes opened. In them was a look Abigail had not seen before, not even in the dark of that first night. It was grief. "Where's she gone?" he said. It came out cracked. "Town, sir. That's all I heard. And she said Mr. Samuel wasn't to know." Nathaniel stared at the ceiling a long, long while. "Sir," Abigail ventured, "you told me somebody in this house wants you dead. You told me to watch." She hesitated. Do you think it's her? Do you think Mrs. Harper?" "I don't know what I think." His jaw worked. "That's the whole cursed trouble of it, girl. I've been lying in this bed 3 days playing dead to catch a snake, and I can't tell you which of them holds the knife. My cousin's already sitting at my table like he owns it. My wife's stealing off to town with a locked box and a driver sworn to lie." He let out a breath that shook. "You know what the worst of it is? 2 weeks ago, I'd have staked my life that Caroline Harper would walk through fire for me. 2 weeks ago. Maybe she would, sir. Maybe." His hand closed slowly into a fist on the blanket. "And maybe grief makes fools of us all." Abigail said nothing. She'd heard those words before. She realized with a small cold jolt that she'd heard them from Samuel that first day over Pierce's shoulder. Grief makes fools of women. The same words near enough. She almost said so. Then she stopped herself because she wasn't sure what it meant, and because a girl who spoke too soon could ruin everything. She'd carry it. She'd carry it further than he'd think. Dr. Pierce returned on the 4th day, and Samuel made certain he was there when the doctor came down. "Well?" Samuel pressed before Pierce had so much as set down his bag. "Any change? Give us the truth, doctor. This family's suffered enough not knowing." Pierce rubbed the back of his neck. "None to speak of. He breathes. He takes a little broth if it's spooned to him. But he don't wake, and each day he don't wake the odds turn against him." He glanced toward the stairs. "I'll be honest with you, Samuel. I've seen this before. A man can linger like this weeks, even months. And in all that time the estate—" He stopped himself as though he'd said more than he meant to. "The estate suffers." Samuel finished for him smooth as oil. "Just so, which is why I've been speaking with a lawyer in town. Purely as a precaution, you understand. Somebody must be ready to act on the family's behalf should the worst come. Somebody with the family's interests at heart." "That's a matter for Mrs. Harper, surely," Pierce said. "Mrs. Harper," Samuel said gently, "is not herself. Grief, doctor, you've seen what it does. A woman in her state can't be trusted to manage hundreds of acres and 100 souls who depend on this land for their bread. She'd want a steady hand near. Family. Abigail, refilling the doctor's cup, watched Pierce's face and saw the doubt flicker there and then. God help them all, saw it settle. Saw the good doctor decide that Samuel Harper, for all his oil, was talking sense. Perhaps, Pierce said slowly, perhaps a steady hand wouldn't go amiss. Upstairs, Nathaniel heard the doctor's perhaps through the floor, and it landed on him like a stone. His own doctor. Turning. He had thought lying there that he understood the shape of the thing, one snake, one knife, waiting to be flushed into the light. He saw now how wrong he'd been. It was not one snake. It was a whole nest of them, and the poison was spreading through his house room by room, mouth by mouth. And the more days he played dead, the more ground he lost. Samuel had a lawyer. Samuel had the doctor half-turned. And Caroline had a locked box, and a secret, and a driver sworn to silence, and no answer at all. He was running out of time, and he was the only one who knew it. That night, the 5th night, Abigail came to change the water at Nathaniel's bedside, and found him already awake, staring at nothing. "You'll wear yourself to nothing, sir, lying here fretting," she whispered. "How long have I got, do you reckon?" It wasn't a real question. Before Samuel's lawyer draws up his papers. Before Pierce signs whatever's put in front of him and calls me unfit. Before somebody decides a sleeping man's taken long enough to die and helps him along. Abigail went very still. "You think somebody'd—" "I think a man who'd plan my funeral behind a barn wall wouldn't lose much sleep over hurrying it." He turned his head and looked at her, and there was something in his face she'd not expected, not command, not the cold authority of the master of the house, but something closer to pleading. "I can't leave this bed, Abigail. The moment I wake for True, I lose my one advantage. They stop showing their faces. They go quiet, and quiet men are the dangerous kind." He wet his lips. "But somebody has to move. Somebody has to find out where my wife's been going. What's in that box, who Samuel's lawyer is, and what he's drawing up. And it can't be me, and it can't be Pierce, and it sure as sin can't be my own kin." He held her gaze. "There's only you." Abigail's mouth went dry. "Sir, I'm a maid. I scrub floors. I don't know how to—" "You saw my eyes flicker when a doctor with 30 years' practice saw nothing. You marked my cousin measuring me for a coffin the first hour he walked in. You followed my wife's going and thought to keep it. You've got sharper eyes than any man in this county, girl, and not one soul here will look twice at a maid who goes where maids go." He drew a slow breath. "I'm asking you to be my eyes and my legs both. I'm asking you to save this family. And I've got nothing to give you for it but my word, which right now ain't worth the breath it takes to swear it." For a long moment the only sound was the candle guttering. Abigail Turner thought of Samuel's cold, flat eyes over his coffee. She thought of the doctor's, perhaps. She thought of Caroline slipping out the front door with a locked box, and of a whole house grown cheerful over a dying man. And she thought, strange this, of her own mother dead these 6 years, who used to tell her that the Lord put sharp eyes in humble heads on purpose so that the low might see what the high were too proud to look at. "I'll do it," Abigail said. Nathaniel let out a breath. "But I'll tell you something first, sir, and you'll not like it." She squared her narrow shoulders. "You keep saying somebody in this house wants you dead. Maybe so. But I've watched Mrs. Harper sit at this bed and hold your hand like it was the last warm thing in the world. Whatever's in that box, whatever she's hiding, I don't believe it's your death she's after." She lifted her chin. "And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first to say so. But I'll not go hunting your wife like she's already guilty. I'll go looking for the truth, plain and whole, wherever it lands." Nathaniel Harper looked at the maid standing at his bedside, plain-faced, work-roughened 21, and afraid and utterly unwavering, and for the first time in 5 days, he felt something he'd near forgotten how to feel. He felt hope. "Then go find it," he said. "The whole of it. And Abigail." She paused at the door. "If I'm wrong about her—" His voice broke on it. "God, girl, I hope I'm wrong about her." Abigail slipped out into the dark hall, the candle cupped against her breath, And somewhere below her in the sleeping house, a floorboard creaked under a weight that had no business being awake at that hour. She froze. She listened. And she understood, standing there in the black, with her heart slamming, that she had just agreed to walk straight into the middle of something far larger and far crueler than a sick man and a locked box. And that from this night forward, there would be no scrubbing of floors that could ever make her small enough to be safe. She blew out the candle, and she went to find the truth. The floorboard creaked again, and Abigail pressed herself flat against the wall of the upper hall. Her breath caught somewhere behind her teeth. Whoever moved below her moved slow, careful the way a person walks when they don't want the house to know they're awake. She counted her own heartbeats. She'd counted to 11 when she heard the small clink of a bottle against glass, and then a low mutter of a man's voice, Samuel's voice, speaking to no one. "Steady now, steady. Ain't nobody watching." She crept to the top of the stair and looked down through the banister rails. Samuel Harper stood at the sideboard in the front hall with a candle of his own, and he was not pouring himself a drink. He was going through the drawer where the household ledgers were kept, the long leather books that Elias Brooks, the estate manager, guarded like scripture. Samuel had one open on the sideboard and was running his finger down a column, and every few seconds he stopped and copied a figure onto a scrap of paper. Abigail didn't dare move. She watched him work for the better part of a quarter hour, watched him slide the ledger back exactly where he'd found it. Square the edges, close the drawer without a sound. He was careful. He was practiced. This was not the first ledger he'd read in the dark, and something in the ease of it turned Abigail's stomach worse than any shout would have. When he'd gone back up the far stair to his room, she waited a full 5 minutes by her own counting before she let herself breathe. She did not sleep that night. By first light she was in the kitchen, and she'd made up her mind. Nathaniel had asked her to find where his wife went, what was in the box, who Samuel's lawyer was. But she'd seen something with her own eyes now, and it changed the order of things. Samuel Harper was reading the estate books in secret. A man didn't do that to protect a family. He did it to strip one. She was still turning it over when Elias Brooks came through the kitchen door, stamping dust off his boots. He was 58 gray, as an old fence post, and he'd kept the Harper accounts for near 30 years. He nodded to her and reached for the coffee. "You're up early, Miss Turner." "Couldn't sleep, Mr. Brooks." "No," he poured. "Nobody sleeps in this house no more. Feels like waiting on a funeral that won't come." He blew across the cup. "How's he this morning, the master?" Abigail hesitated. She'd sworn to Nathaniel she'd say nothing, not to the doctor, not to the wife, not to God himself. But she looked at the old man's face, at the grief plain in it, and she made a decision that could have ended her right there. "Mr. Brooks," she said quietly, "how well do you know your ledgers?" He blinked at her over the cup. "Better than I know my own name." "Why?" "Because somebody's been reading them at night, in the dark, copying figures." Elias set the cup down very slowly. "Who?" "I'll not say a name yet." She held his gaze. "But I'll ask you this. If a man wanted to steal an estate from a family not with a gun, but with paper, where would he start? What would he need?" The old man was quiet a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had dropped low. "He'd need debts," he said. "Real ones, or ones he could make look real. He'd need to show the estate owed money it couldn't pay. Then he'd need a note, a paper saying the family borrowed against the land and never made it good. Get a note like that recognized by a court with the master unfit to speak for himself, and the man who holds the note holds the land." He turned his cup slowly on the table. "It's been done before, Miss Turner. Whole families put out on the road legal as a Sunday sermon by nothing but a piece of paper and a judge who didn't look too close." Abigail's mouth had gone dry. "And could you tell if somebody'd made a false note? Could you tell it from a true one?" "I could tell if the figures didn't match my books." His eyes sharpened on her. "Girl, what have you seen?" "I've seen enough to know I need you," she said. "And I've seen enough to know I can't tell you all of it. Not yet. But I need you to do one thing for me, Mr. Brooks, and I need you to do it quiet. I need you to go through every account this estate has, every debt, every note. I need you to know what's true down to the last cent, so that when a lie comes, and it's coming, you'll know it the second you see it." Elias Brooks studied her a long while, this maid of 21 giving him orders in his own kitchen. And then, God bless him, he didn't laugh and he didn't ask again. He just nodded once. "I'll start today," he said. "And Miss Turner." He rose, put his hat back on. "Whatever it is you've got your hand in, you watch yourself. Men who'd steal a man's whole life don't stop at scaring a servant girl." "I know it, sir," Abigail said. She didn't tell him how well she knew it. She didn't tell him about the master lying awake upstairs playing dead, or about the flicker of his eyes in the dark, or about the promise she'd made. But she carried it all out of that kitchen, and up the back stair with her heavy as a millstone, and she thought one ally. "I've got one ally now." And it steadied her more than she'd expected. She'd need him. She just didn't know yet how soon. Caroline Harper came home that afternoon, and Abigail was in the front hall when she did. The mistress came through the door, pale and worn, the locked case still in her gloved hand, and she'd hardly crossed the threshold before Samuel was there, all warmth and concern, taking her elbow, like a dutiful kinsman. "Caroline, you look done in. Where on earth have you been in this heat with Nathaniel scarce clinging to life?" "Town?" Caroline said. "Errands. Errands." Samuel's smile stayed fixed. What errands could pull a wife from her husband's deathbed? "People are beginning to talk, you know. It doesn't look well. A woman gadding about while her husband lies dying. Let them talk." Caroline pulled her elbow free. "I've never yet arranged my life around what idle people find seemly, Samuel, and I'll not begin now. I only mean to protect you." His voice dropped gentle, poisonous. "You're not yourself. Grief clouds the mind. Let me carry some of this burden, cousin. The estate, the accounts, the tenants. It's too much for you alone. Let me help." Caroline stopped on the stair and looked back at him, and Abigail, standing in the shadow of the doorway, saw something pass over the mistress's face that was not grief at all. It was contempt, cold and complete. "You've never in your life wanted to help a soul but yourself." "Samuel Harper," Caroline said. "Don't think 3 years' absence has made me forget it. Now let go of my arm." She climbed the stairs and left him standing there. Samuel's smile did not so much as flicker. But Abigail was close enough to see his knuckles whiten around the newel post, and she thought he hates her. He truly hates her. And she filed it away with everything else. Upstairs, Caroline went straight to her husband's room. Abigail followed at a careful distance and stopped outside the door, which the mistress had left ajar, and she was not proud of it, but she listened. For a while, there was nothing. Then Caroline's voice, low and cracked, meant for no ears but a sleeping man's. "I did it, Nathaniel. I sold the pearls. Your mother's pearls. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I know what they meant to you, but there wasn't any other way. It was them or the Aldridge note. And if we default on the Aldridge note, Samuel's got exactly the opening he's been praying for." A long shaking breath. "I paid it off. All of it. In your name, quiet, so there's not a debt in this county he can use against us. I've been running myself ragged, closing every hole I can find before... Her voice broke entirely. "Before you leave me. If you're going to leave me. And if you are Nathaniel Harper, then I'll not have you leave me poor and shamed with that snake picking over the bones. I'll fight him with the last dollar and the last pearl and the last breath I've got. Do you hear me? Do you hear me at all?" And on the bed, Nathaniel Harper lay dead still with his eyes shut, and tears sliding silent down the sides of his face into his ears because he could not answer her, because to answer her was to give away the only weapon he had left, and because the shame of what he'd let himself believe about this woman was choking him worse than any fall from any horse. Abigail stepped back from the door. She'd been right. She'd been right. And she'd never wanted to be right about anything so much in her whole life. The mistress wasn't stealing. The mistress was saving them, selling her own jewels, breaking her own heart, running herself into the ground to close every door before Samuel could get a foot in one. And Nathaniel had suspected her. Abigail had seen it in his face that first night. "Is she?" he'd said when she called Caroline grieving. Is she? Abigail slipped away down the hall before the mistress could come out, and her chest ached with something she couldn't name. She had to tell him. She had to make him understand what she'd just heard, so he'd stop torturing himself, so he'd know. But she stopped at the head of the stairs because a worse thought had caught up with her. If Caroline was closing every debt, sealing every hole, then Samuel had watched his easy road wash out from under him. His whole scheme, the way Elias had laid it out, rested on the estate owing money it couldn't pay. And now it didn't. Now every honest debt was cleared. So what would a man like Samuel do when the honest road closed? He'd make a dishonest one. He'd make a false note. The thought hit her so hard she had to grip the rail. Samuel reading ledgers in the dark, copying figures. He wasn't hunting for real debts anymore. He was gathering what he needed to forge one. Right numbers, right names, right dates, so that when he produced his paper, claiming the Harpers had borrowed thousands against the land, it would match the real books close enough to fool a judge. Caroline had shut every true door, so Samuel was building a false one, and nobody knew it but a maid standing at the top of a staircase with her heart in her throat. She meant to go to Nathaniel that night. She never got the chance. Samuel caught her in the back passage after supper, stepped out of a doorway so sudden she nearly dropped her lamp. Abigail Turner. He said her whole name slow, like he was tasting it. The industrious little maid, always about, always underfoot. He didn't smile now. You were in the front hall this morning when Caroline came home, weren't you? I was cleaning, sir. And last night? He tilted his head. Were you cleaning last night too, on the upper stair, round about the small hours? Abigail's blood went to ice. He'd known. All that careful creeping, and he'd known she was there. I don't take your meaning, sir. Don't you? Samuel stepped closer. He was not a large man, but he made himself large, now filled up the narrow passage. Let me be plain with you, girl, since we're being plain. This house is about to change hands. When a man of no consequence dies, the little people who served him get scattered to the winds, turned out, forgotten. It's the way of things. He let that sit. Unless one of those little people is clever enough to see which way the wind's blowing, and clever enough to make herself useful to the man who's coming up in the world, instead of the one going down into the ground. You're offering me a place, Abigail said flatly. I'm offering you a future. His voice went soft as butter. A word from you now and again about what happens in this house, what Caroline does, who she sees, what that fool Brooks says over his coffee, little things. And in return, when I'm master here, and I will be girl, make no mistake, it's already all but done, you'll not be scrubbing floors. You'll have a position, security, a wage that'd make your mother weep to see it. He smiled at last, and it was the worst thing she'd seen yet. Or you can keep your loyalty to a dying man who won't remember your name by winter, and you can find out exactly what happens to servants who choose the losing side. Your call, Abigail. But choose careful. There's precious little room in this world for a girl with no place and no friends. Everything in Abigail wanted to spit in his face. She smiled instead. That's a generous offer, Mr. Harper, she made herself say, and she hated how steady it came out. I'd be a fool not to think on it. Something flickered across Samuel's face, surprise, then satisfaction. There's a sensible girl. Think on it. But don't think too long. Wind's blowing fast. He stepped aside to let her pass. And Abigail. If I find you've been carrying tales the other direction to Caroline, to Brooks, to anyone I'll know. I know everything that happens under this roof. Remember that. She walked past him with her lamp held level and her spine straight, and she did not let herself shake until she'd rounded the corner and put a wall between them. I know everything that happens under this roof. He didn't. He couldn't. Because if Samuel Harper knew the one true thing, that the master he'd measured for a coffin was lying awake behind that door, hearing every word, marking every face, then this whole game was over. That was their one card. Nathaniel awake and no one knowing it. And Samuel had just told her without meaning to exactly how much depended on that card staying hidden. She got to Nathaniel past midnight when the house was dead. He knows I was on the stair last night, she whispered, kneeling close. "He offered me money to spy on your wife. Threatened me if I didn't. Sir Samuel's not looking for real debts anymore. Your wife's cleared them all. I heard her tell you. The pearls, the Aldridge note. All of it, she's closed every door. I heard her." Nathaniel's voice was raw. "God forgive me, Abigail. I heard my wife sell my mother's pearls to save this family, and I lay here and let her think she was talking to a dead man. I let her carry it alone." His hand fisted in the blanket. "I was wrong about her. I was so wrong I can hardly breathe for the shame of it." "There's no time for shame, sir. Listen to me." She gripped the edge of the bed. "If she's closed the true debts, then Samuel's going to make a false one. He's been reading your books in the dark copying figures. I saw him. He's gathering what he needs to forge a note one that matches your real accounts close enough to fool a judge. He'll wait till you're declared unfit, then he'll produce his paper claim you borrowed against the land, and take the whole estate legal as anything. Mr. Brooks says it's been done before." Nathaniel went very still. "Brooks knows." His voice sharpened. "You told Brooks." "I told him somebody's reading the ledgers. I didn't tell him about you, I swear it. But I asked him to go through every account, learn every true figure, so that when the false note comes, he'll know it on sight. He's the only man in this county who could." She leaned closer. "We can't stop Samuel making the note, sir. But we can make sure that when he lays it down, there's a man in the room who can prove to the bone it's a lie." For a moment, Nathaniel didn't speak. Then slowly, he reached out and closed his hand over hers, the master's hand over the maid's calloused palm to calloused palm. "You've a better head for this than I do, girl," he said. "I mean that. I've been lying here drowning in my own suspicions, and you walked into it 5 days ago, knowing nothing, and you've already found the shape of the whole thing." He let go. "All right, Brooks learns the true books. We wait for Samuel to show his paper, and we let him think." His jaw tightened. "We let him think you took his offer." Abigail's stomach dropped. "Sir, you said he offered you money to spy on Caroline. So spy." His eyes glinted in the dark. "Take his coin. Feed him scraps true enough to keep him trusting you small enough to do no harm, and in return, he'll talk to you like a man talks to his own creature. He'll tell you things. When the note's ready. When the lawyer comes. When he means to strike." He nodded slowly. "You wanted to be my eyes and legs, Abigail. Now be my ears in the enemy's tent. He said if I carried tales the other way, he'd know. He said he knows everything that happens under this roof." "He knows nothing." Nathaniel's mouth curved grim. "He doesn't know I'm awake. He doesn't know Brooks is learning the books. He doesn't know the maid he thinks he's bought is going to hand me the rope to hang him with. Let him think he knows everything, girl. It's the surest way to make a clever man blind." Abigail looked at him a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right, sir," she said. "I'll be his creature. God help me. I'll play it well enough he never doubts it." She rose. "But I'll tell you now, it's going to cost me something wearing that face. Smiling at that man. Letting him think I'm his." "I know it," Nathaniel said quietly. "And I'll not forget it. Whatever comes of this, I'll not forget who stood where Abigail Turner. You have my word. And this time, it's worth the breath." She slipped out. She'd taken 3 steps down the black hall when a voice spoke behind her, low and pleasant from the dark. "Late to be tending the sick, ain't it, Abigail Samuel?" He'd been standing in the shadow of the far doorway the whole time. She had no way of knowing how long. She had no way of knowing what he'd heard through a door she'd thought was thick enough. Her whole body went cold. "Couldn't sleep, sir," she said, and by some miracle her voice held. "Went to see was the master resting easy." "And was he?" "Still as ever, sir. Doctor says it can't be much longer now." Samuel stepped out of the dark, and she made herself meet his eyes, made herself keep her face soft and stupid and scared of losing her place, everything he wanted to see. He studied her for a long, long moment. Then he smiled. "Good girl," he said. "You're thinking on my offer. I can see it. Sleep on it. We'll talk soon." He moved past her toward his room, and just as she let herself begin to breathe, he stopped. Without turning around, he said, "You know it's a curious thing. I've been in and out of that sick room a dozen times myself, sat right by the bed, and I never once heard him make a sound. A pause. But some night standing in this hall I could have sworn I heard two people breathing in there, and then he was gone, and Abigail stood alone in the dark, and she understood that the game had just become far more dangerous than either she or Nathaniel had reckoned, because Samuel Harper suspected. He didn't know, but he suspected. And a suspicious man was exactly the dangerous kind Nathaniel had warned her of. She did not sleep at all. The next morning she went to Samuel and told him she'd take his offer. She made herself do it plain and a little sullen, the way a poor girl does a thing she's ashamed of but can't afford to refuse. "I'll do it, sir. Watch the mistress. Tell you what she does. But I want it in coin, not promises. Half now." Samuel laughed delighted and counted the money into her palm. "There's my sensible girl. I knew you had sense under all that scrubbing." He folded her fingers over the coins. "Now, tell me something true to seal our bargain. Something I don't know. Prove you're mine." And here was the knife's edge. She had to give him something real. Something that would ring true, that he could check, that would win his trust without handing him anything that could actually hurt them. "The mistress sold her pearls," Abigail said. "Yesterday, in town, and used the money to pay off the Aldridge note." Samuel's face changed. For a moment the pleasant mask slipped clean off, and underneath it, Abigail saw pure naked fury. The look of a man who has just learned that a door he was counting on has been bricked shut. "She paid the Aldridge note," he said very quietly, "in full." "Yes, sir. I heard her tell—" Abigail caught herself just in time. "I heard her tell the driver. On the way back." Samuel turned away from her and stood a moment with his back to her, and she watched his shoulders and thought, now he knows the honest road's gone. Now he'll do the thing Brooks warned about. Now it starts for real. When Samuel turned back, the mask was on again, smooth as ever. But his eyes had gone somewhere cold and final. "You've earned your coin, Abigail," he said. "That's exactly the kind of thing I need to know. Keep it up." He tucked his hands behind his back. "As it happens, I've got business in town myself tomorrow. A man I need to see. A man good with papers." He smiled thinly. "The wheels turn, girl. The wheels turn. You just keep your eyes on Caroline and let me worry about the papers." A man good with papers. There it was. He'd all but said it to her face. "Yes, sir," Abigail said. "I'll watch her close." She kept her face down and dull until he'd gone. Then she went and found Elias Brooks in the estate office, and she shut the door behind her. "It started," she told him. "He's going to town tomorrow to see a man good with papers. You know what that means." Brooks set down his pen. His face had gone grave. "It means he's having the note drawn. False, like I said." He rubbed his jaw. "How much time have I got?" "I don't know. Days. Maybe less." She came and stood over his desk. "Are you close on the true books?" "Close." He pulled a heavy ledger toward him and opened it, and she saw the pages were dense with his careful hand, cross-checked and cross-checked again. "I've been at it since you asked me. Every account, every note going back 15 years. I've near got the whole estate down cold. If Samuel lays a false paper next to what I've built here, and there's so much as $1 out of place, a wrong date, a signature that don't sit right, I'll catch it." He looked up at her. "But Miss Turner, knowing a thing's false and proving it before a judge are two different animals. He'll have a lawyer, he'll have witnesses likely paid, he'll have the master declared unfit so there's no one to speak against the debt. Our word against his paper, and paper wins, girl. Paper always wins unless we've got something better than words." "Then we'll get something better than words," Abigail said. "Such as—" She didn't answer right away, because the answer was upstairs lying in a bed playing dead, the one card that trumped every forged note and paid witness in the county. A living master awake and sound of mind, who could stand up in front of God and everybody and say, "I never borrowed a cent against my land, and here's the man who kept my books to prove it." But she couldn't tell Brooks that, not yet. Not with Samuel prowling the halls at night listening for two people breathing. "Just trust me, Mr. Brooks," she said. "Get the true books airtight. When the time comes, we'll have more than words. I swear it to you." Elias Brooks looked at her a long while. This slip of a girl making promises no maid had any business making, and then he nodded slow. "You know," he said, "30 years I've kept these books for men who never once asked my opinion on anything past the price of feed corn. And here's a housemaid come in and set me to the most important work of my life like she was born to command it." He almost smiled. "I don't know what you're mixed up in, Miss Turner, but I'll do my part. And if it's a fight you're bringing to that snake—" His jaw set. "Then I'm glad to be in it. I've watched this family since Nathaniel was a boy. I'll not see Samuel Harper carve it up while there's breath in me." "There's more of us than he thinks," Abigail said quietly. "That's what he doesn't know. He thinks he's got a dying man, a grieving fool of a wife, and a bought maid. He doesn't know he's got you. He doesn't know he's got me. And he surely doesn't know—" She stopped herself again at the very edge. "He doesn't know how wrong he is about what he's up against." Samuel went to town the next day and came back that evening well pleased with himself, and Abigail, watching, saw a man who believed the hard part was behind him. She played her part. She brought him a scrap or two about Caroline, that the mistress had written a letter to a cousin in Charleston, that she'd spent an hour with the tenant families out past the creek. True things, small things, nothing that could wound. Samuel took them like a man tossing a dog at supper, hardly looking up. But that night Caroline did something that undid all of Abigail's careful calm. Abigail was fetching the mistress's evening tray when she found Caroline standing at her writing desk, and the mistress turned to her with a face gone white and set. "Abigail, shut the door." She shut it. "You've served me 3 years," Caroline said. "I've never had cause to doubt you. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want the truth, because I've no one else in this house I can ask." She drew a breath. "Are you carrying tales to Samuel?" The floor seemed to drop out from under Abigail. "Ma'am, Molly saw him counting money into your hand yesterday." Caroline's voice was steady, but her eyes were wounded. "In the passage, so don't tell me you weren't. I want to know what you told him, and I want to know why." And there it was, the price Abigail had known she'd pay. She stood in front of the one person in that house who'd been kind to her, the woman who'd sold her own mother's pearls to save them all, and she could not tell her the truth. She could not say, "I'm playing him for the master who's alive, who's awake, who heard you weep at his bedside." She could not say it because Samuel prowled the halls, because a word in the wrong place would end everything, because Nathaniel had made her swear. So Abigail Turner did the hardest thing she'd done in her whole life. She let Caroline Harper go on believing the worst of her. "I took his money, ma'am," she said low. "I did. Times are hard, and I've a place to lose. He offered, and I took it." Caroline flinched like she'd been struck. "So you're his?" "I told him small things, ma'am. Nothing that could hurt you. I swear before God." "You swear?" Caroline laughed, and it was an awful sound. "You stand there and swear. Do you know what I'm fighting, girl? Do you know what I've spent and sold and sacrificed this past week to keep a roof over the heads of every soul on this land, including yours, and you'd sell it back to that snake for a handful of coin?" Her voice cracked. "I thought, God help me, I thought you were the one person under this roof I could trust. And you're bought like all the rest." "Ma'am, get out." Caroline turned away, and her shoulders were shaking now, and it was worse than any shouting could have been. "Take your tray and your Judas coins and get out of my sight." Abigail set the tray down with hands that trembled. Every word in her wanted to come out. "I'm not against you. I'm the only one truly for you. Your husband lives. He heard you. He knows now what you are, and he's ashamed to his bones, and I'm the rope we're going to hang Samuel with. All of it right there aching to be said." She swallowed all of it. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Harper," she whispered. "I'm sorrier than you'll ever know, and someday I hope to God you'll understand it." She left the room with her mistress weeping behind her, and she stood in the hall with her back against the door, and her own tears coming hot and silent, and she thought, this is what it costs. This is the price of the game. I've made the kindest woman in the county believe I betrayed her, and I can't say a word to set it right. And as she stood there breaking a door down the hall, clicked softly shut, she snapped her head up. Samuel's door. He'd been in the hall. He'd heard God knew how much of it. He'd heard Caroline accuse her. He'd heard Abigail confess to taking his money. From where he stood, it would have sounded like proof his creature was doing exactly as he'd paid her to. Which was good. Which was what they wanted. But Abigail's blood ran cold anyway, because Samuel had been in that hall listening at doors exactly as she'd feared he did every night. And if he'd been there tonight, then he was there other nights. And one of those nights he'd be there when she crept into Nathaniel. And one of those nights he'd press his ear to the sick-room door at just the wrong moment, and he'd hear the master of the house speaking plain in a voice that was supposed to be dead. She couldn't go to Nathaniel tonight. Not with Samuel awake and prowling. Not after this. So she carried it all alone. Caroline's grief. Samuel's forged note in the making. Brooks racing to master the books, and the terrible tightening sense that the whole thing was building to a head faster than any of them were ready for. She went to her narrow room and lay down without undressing and stared at the ceiling. She didn't sleep, so she was awake to hear it when it happened. Deep in the night, past 2 by the church bell's last toll, a sound came up through the house that had no business in it. Not the creak of a prowling man. Something worse. A crash glass or crockery from the direction of the sick room, and then a voice, sharp and short, cut off almost before it started. Abigail was on her feet before she'd finished waking. She was down the hall in her stocking feet, heart slamming, and she reached the sick room door and shoved it open. And in the gray dark, she saw 2 things at once that stopped her heart. The water basin lay shattered on the floor, and Samuel Harper was standing over Nathaniel's bed with a pillow in his 2 hands. For one frozen instant, nobody moved. Samuel with the pillow half raised. Nathaniel on the bed beneath him, eyes shut, still playing the corpse. Even now, even with death in his cousin's hands, because to open them was to lose everything, and because if he opened them, Samuel would know the game, and there'd be no reason left on earth not to finish it. Then Samuel's head turned slow toward the door, toward Abigail. "Well," he said softly, and he did not put the pillow down. "Look who couldn't sleep." "Mr. Harper." Her voice came out a thread. "What are you—" His breathing changed. Samuel's tone was reasonable terrible. "I came to check on him, poor soul, and his breathing changed and I feared he was in distress. I was only—" He glanced at the pillow in his hands as though noticing it. "Only trying to make him comfortable." "Put it down," Abigail said. "You're bought, girl. You're mine. You'll say what I tell you to say about this night, or you'll find out just how far I can reach." His knuckles tightened on the pillow. "This is a mercy. He's dying anyway. He'd want it. And once it's done, everything I promised you, the place, the wage, the future, it's all yours. You just have to walk back out that door and forget you saw. That's all. One little thing." And Abigail Turner stood in the doorway with the shattered basin between them and the man she'd sworn to save, lying helpless on the bed, and she understood that the whole game had just collapsed down to this one instant. This one choice with no plan and no ally and no time, and that whatever she did in the next 3 seconds, there would be no taking it back. Nathaniel lay still as death beneath the pillow, trusting her, waiting to see which way the maid everyone had bought and sold would break. Abigail did not run at him. She did not scream. Some cold, clear part of her, the part her mother had put there, knew that a scream would only make him finish it faster. "Mr. Harper," she said, and she made her voice small and shaking and stupid, the voice of the bought girl he thought he owned. "You're right. You're right, sir. He's dying anyway. But not like this." Samuel's grip on the pillow eased a fraction. "What do you mean, not like this?" "I mean you'll hang." She took one slow step into the room, hands open. "A pillow leaves marks, sir. Burst blood in the eyes. Dr. Pierce'll see it plain as print. He's a careful man, you said so yourself. You do it with that pillow tonight, and tomorrow the doctor sees a smothered man, and then there's questions, and then there's a rope. And who's standing in the doorway when it happens?" "Me." Your creature. The one who'll have to swear it was a peaceful death. She let her voice tremble. You smother him tonight, and you've hanged us both, sir. Think. You've come too far to hang for 3 days' patience. For a long, terrible moment, Samuel just looked at her over the bed, weighing her, and Nathaniel lay dead still beneath the raised pillow, not knowing if the next thing he felt would be smothering cloth. Then Samuel lowered the pillow. You've got a cold little head on you, girl, he said slowly. Colder than I reckoned. He set the pillow back beneath Nathaniel's slack head, almost gentle, and stepped back. You're right. It's not worth the risk. 3 days. Pierce declares him unfit. My paper's ready by then, and he can die natural any time after nobody looks twice at a coma that finally quits. He smiled at her, and it was worse than the pillow. See? This is why I bought you. You think ahead. Now clean up that basin before somebody hears, and not a word of this. To anyone. We understand each other. We understand each other, sir, Abigail whispered. He went to the door. He stopped there, and without turning, he said the thing that froze her marrow. His breathing did change, though. A pause. Right before I raised the pillow. Sped up, like a man who knows something's coming. He turned his head just enough to show her the edge of his profile. Dying men don't know things, Abigail, do they? And then he was gone. Abigail stood shaking in the dark, and only when his footsteps had died away down the hall did she hear the small, ragged sound from the bed. Nathaniel letting out the breath he'd been holding since Samuel first leaned over him, his whole body trembling with the effort of having lain still, while his own cousin decided whether to kill him. She dropped to her knees at the bedside, careless of the broken crockery, and gripped his hand. He's gone, she breathed. You can breathe, sir. He's gone. He'd have done it. Nathaniel's voice was a wreck. My own blood. He stood over me with a pillow and called it a mercy, and I lay here and let him, because the second I opened my eyes... I know, sir. You saved my life. His hand crushed hers. You stood in that door with nothing, no plan, no help, and you talked a murderer off me with nothing but your own wits. A maid. 3 days ago, I asked you to be my eyes. Tonight you were my whole life. His breath shuddered. I'll never call a servant beneath me again as long as I live. Do you hear me? Never again. He suspects... Abigail cut in because there was no time for gratitude. He heard your breathing change. He said dying men don't know things. He's not sure yet, but he's close, sir. He's so close. We can't wait for 3 days. We can't wait for him to be certain. The moment he knows you're awake, that pillow comes back and nothing I say will stop it. She squeezed his hand hard. We've got to move first. We've got to move now. Nathaniel was quiet a moment, mastering himself. When he spoke again, the wreck was gone from his voice, and the old iron was back. How close is Brooks? Close on the true books. Days off, maybe. But Samuel's forged note is coming just as fast he saw his man in town. She leaned in. It's a race now, sir. His paper against Brooks's books. And if Samuel's paper lands first in front of a judge with you declared unfit, then we make sure I'm not unfit. Nathaniel's jaw set. It's time, Abigail. I've played dead long enough. I've learned everything the dark can teach me. Now I need to be a living man again, but quiet. Secret. I need Brooks, and I need Pierce, and I need my wife, and I need every one of them ready to stand in a room and speak the truth at the same instant, so that when Samuel lays down his lie, the floor opens under him, and there's no crawling out. He turned his head toward her. Can you do it? Can you bring them to me one at a time in the dark, without Samuel ever knowing this room's become the center of everything? I can do it, sir. Then start with Brooks, tonight. He's the one Samuel watches least. Bring him. Abigail rose, but at the shattered basin she paused, and something crossed her face. Sir, there's one I can't bring. Who? Mrs. Harper. Her voice dropped. She thinks I've betrayed her. Tonight she near threw me from her room, called me Judas, said I was bought like all the rest. She won't come at my asking. She'd sooner spit on me. Abigail's chin lifted, but her eyes were wet. I let her believe it, sir, to keep your secret. I let the kindest woman in this county think I sold her out, and I couldn't say a word, and now she hates me, and I can't undo it without undoing everything." Nathaniel was silent a long moment. "Then that's mine to undo," he said at last, and there was something new in his voice, something soft and broken and resolved all at once. "Not yours, mine. When the time's right, I'll be the one to tell her what you did. I'll be the one to make her see. And I swear to you, Abigail Turner, before this is finished, my wife's going to know she never had a truer friend in this house than the maid she called Judas." His hand fisted on the blanket. "But first I have to make her forgive me. And God knows that's the taller mountain." Abigail brought Elias Brooks up the back stair an hour before dawn, and she'll never forget the old man's face when Nathaniel Harper opened his eyes in the candlelight and said plain and quiet, "Hello, Elias. It's been a long few days playing dead." Brooks made a sound like he'd been struck. His knees buckled, and he caught himself on the bedpost. "Sweet Lord above." His voice shook. "You're all this time you've been—" He looked at Abigail, then back at the master, and understanding broke over his weathered face like sunrise. "That's why you set me to the books. That's why the secrecy. He's alive. He's been alive the whole—" He pressed a hand to his mouth. "Nathaniel, my boy, I've kept your father's accounts and yours near 30 years, and I never—" "Easy, Elias." Nathaniel reached out and gripped the old man's arm. "I'm sorry for the shock of it. There wasn't a safer way. Samuel's been in this room a dozen times. He was here tonight." His face darkened. "With a pillow." Brooks went white. "He never—" "He did." Abigail stopped him. "Now sit, old friend, and tell me plain how close is the enemy's paper, and how close are you to burying it?" Brooks sat heavily on the stool by the bed and gathered himself, and when he spoke his voice had steadied into the flat certainty of a man on his own ground. "I've near got the whole estate down cold, sir. 15 years of accounts, every debt, every note, every payment cross-checked twice. There's not a false figure could stand next to my books and not show itself. But," he lifted a warning hand, "knowing and proving. If Samuel's got a forged note and a paid witness or two and a lawyer, and you declared unfit, so there's no living voice against it, then it's his paper and his men against an old bookkeeper's word. And I'll tell you how that ends in a courtroom, sir. It ends with us on the road. It ends," Nathaniel said quietly, "with the dead man walking into the room." Brooks stared at him. "That's the piece he can't plan for," Nathaniel went on. "Samuel's built his whole scheme on a corpse in waiting. Every forged figure, every bought witness, every word to the doctor, all of it rests on me being unfit to speak. So we let him lay it all down. We let him stand up in front of the men of this county and produce his note and name his witnesses and think he's won." His eyes glinted. "And then I walk in, sound of mind. And beside me stands the one man who kept the true books ready to prove his papers a lie down to the last penny. His whole tower falls in a single breath, Elias, because it was never built on land or law. It was built on my death, and I'm not dead." Slowly, the old bookkeeper began to smile. "Well, I'll be damned," he said softly. "That's Nathaniel. That's the finest trap I ever heard laid. He can't run from it. Every lie he tells digs him deeper, and he won't even know the ground's open till he's already fallen through." Then the smile faded. "But it hangs on one thing. It hangs on nobody telling him you're awake. And you said he suspects." "He does." Abigail spoke up from the shadows. "He heard the master's breathing change tonight. He said dying men don't know things. He's not certain. But he's hunting for certainty, Mr. Brooks. And if he finds it before we're ready—" "Then we'd best be ready fast," Brooks said grimly. He rose. "Give me 2 more days on the books, sir. 2 days, and I'll have it airtight, every account ready to lay open in front of a judge or God or the devil himself. 2 days. "You've got them," Nathaniel said. But Elias moved like Samuel's watching every step, because he likely is. 2 days. It should have been 2 quiet days of waiting. It was nothing of the kind. The first blow came at noon when Dr. Pierce arrived unannounced with a paper in his bag, and Samuel at his shoulder, and Abigail understood the moment she saw their two faces together that the race had just tightened past what any of them had planned for. "Mrs. Harper." Samuel's voice carried through the house, pitched loud enough for everyone in it. "Caroline, come down, cousin. Dr. Pierce has something we all need to hear." Caroline came down slow, her face set and wary. Abigail hung back at the edge of the hall, invisible as maids are, and watched. "I'll be plain, Mrs. Harper," Pierce said, and he looked uncomfortable, a decent man doing a thing he half doubted. "It's been near 2 weeks. Your husband hasn't stirred. He takes broth he breathes, but there's no sign of mind left in him, and in my medical judgment there's not likely to be. I've prepared a paper. It states that Nathaniel Harper is no longer competent to manage his affairs." He hesitated. "It needs a signature. Someone must be empowered to act for the estate, for the tenants, for all of it. The land can't sit unmanaged." "And who?" Caroline said very quietly. "Did you have in mind to sign it, Doctor?" "Well." Pierce shifted. "By rights it'd fall to family, and Mr. Samuel here has been—" "Of course he has." Caroline's laugh was cold as creek ice. "How convenient for you, Samuel. My husband's not 2 weeks abed, and here you are with a paper ready to hand you the keys." "I'm trying to save this family, Caroline." Samuel spread his hands, the picture of wounded patience. "Somebody has to. You've been gadding to town selling your jewels. Oh yes, I know all about the pearls, running the estate's good name into gossip while the land sits and the tenants fret. I'm offering to shoulder it, and you repay me with venom." He turned to Pierce. "You see what I've borne, Doctor. Grief's turned her against her own kin." And here Caroline did something that made Abigail's breath catch. Because it was the wrong move, the dangerous move, and she made it out of pure defiance. "I'll not sign it," Caroline said. "And I'll not let you sign it either. My husband is not dead. Samuel, and until he is this estate, answers to me and to no one else. I've paid every debt this family owes, every one in full in his name, so there's not a scrap of ground for you to stand on. You've got no debts to call, no unpaid notes, nothing." Her chin came up. "You've lost, cousin. Whatever you were planning. I've closed every door. Now take your paper and get out of my house." Silence. And Abigail, watching from the shadows, saw the exact moment Samuel understood he'd been told plain to his face that the honest road was gone, and saw him decide right there to take the other one. "Every debt," Samuel repeated softly. "You've paid every debt. Well." He picked up his hat. "We'll see about that, Caroline. We surely will." He nodded to the doctor. "Come, Pierce. The lady needs time to grieve. We'll not trouble her further today." He walked out unhurried, and that unhurriedness was the most frightening thing Abigail had seen yet, because it was the calm of a man who's just been dealt his last card, and found it was exactly the one he wanted. Caroline had thought she'd won. She'd thought paying the debts sealed him out. She'd just told him out loud that she'd cleared the true books and handed him his reason to forge a false one. Abigail caught Caroline on the stairs after unable to stop herself. "Ma'am, that was brave, but—" "Don't." Caroline didn't even look at her. "I've no words for you, Abigail. Save them." "Ma'am, please, you don't understand what he's—" "I understand you took his money." Caroline turned then, and her eyes were raw. "That's all I need to understand. Now let me pass." Abigail let her pass. There was nothing else to do. She stood on the stairs, with the whole terrible truth locked in her chest. "He's not going to call a real debt, ma'am. You've made him forge a false one. You've made it worse, and I can't tell you why, I know." And she watched the woman she was trying to save climb the stairs, believing she'd already won a war that was about to turn on her. That night, Abigail went to Nathaniel and told him all of it. His face when she finished was a study in agony. "She thinks she's beaten him," he said. "She's proud of it. And it's the very thing that damns her." He pressed the heels of his hands to his eyes. "I lie here and listen to my wife fight for this family with everything she's got, walking straight into every trap, because she can't hear a word of warning from a dead man. Abigail, this is torture. Truly. There's a cruelty to this game I never reckoned on." 2 days, sir. Brooks said 2 days. Samuel won't give us 2 days. Nathaniel dropped his hands. You heard him. We'll see about that. He's gone to fetch his forged note now tonight or tomorrow, and the moment it's in his hand, he'll move. Because Caroline's just told him the clock's against him too. He knows she's closing every door. He'll want to strike before she thinks to close whatever door he means to come through. He shook his head. The race just got shorter, girl, for both sides. It got shorter the very next morning, and from a direction none of them had watched. Abigail was in the kitchen when a boy came to the back door with a folded note for Mr. Samuel and Abigail. Because she was the bought creature, now trusted to fetch and carry for him, took it up herself. And because she was Abigail Turner, she read the direction on the outside before she handed it over, and she saw it was from a name she knew, J. Pierce, M.D., the doctor, writing to Samuel, in secret. She could not open it. She dared not. But she carried it up, turning it over and over in her mind, and when she gave it to Samuel, she watched his face as he broke the seal, and read, and she saw satisfaction bloom there like a stain. Good news, sir. She made herself ask, dull and dutiful. The best kind. Samuel folded the note away, expansive with pleasure. Our good doctor has come round entirely to my way of thinking. Turns out a man of medicine likes to be on the winning side, same as anyone. He tucked the note into his breast pocket right over his heart. Between us, Abigail, and it stays between us, Dr. Pierce has agreed to declare Nathaniel unfit and put his name to it, whether Caroline signs or no. A doctor's word carries in these matters. Add a note of debt, add a judge, and my dear cousin's protests won't be worth the breath she spends on them. He smiled. The pieces are nearly all on the board, girl. Nearly all. Abigail kept her face slack, but inside her, everything had gone to ice. Pierce had turned. Not half-turned. Not doubting turned, bought or frightened or flattered into putting his name to a lie. The one man of standing they'd counted on to be honest. The one witness whose word might have balanced Samuel's paper. Gone over. Their trap needed Pierce. Nathaniel had said it himself. I need Brooks, and I need Pierce. A living master and an honest bookkeeper could prove the note false, yes. But a doctor who'd already signed a paper swearing Nathaniel unfit would be standing on the other side of the room, sworn to Samuel, ready to say the waking man was raving-addled, not in his right mind. Pierce Turned didn't just cost them a witness. Pierce Turned could unmake the whole plan. She had to tell Nathaniel. And she had to find out what Pierce's note actually said when he meant to sign what Samuel had promised him, whether there was any thread left to pull him back. She never got the chance to do either, because that was the afternoon everything broke open at once. It started with Molly, the other maid, the one who'd told Caroline about the money. Molly found Abigail in the linen room and shut the door behind her, and her round face was frightened. Abigail, I've got to tell somebody, and you're the only one She wrung her hands. I did a wicked thing. I told the mistress about you and Mr. Samuel's money. I thought I was helping her. But now Mr. Samuel's got me carrying notes for him and paying me too, and I'm frightened, Abigail. I don't know what I'm caught up in. Last night he had me carry a note to a man in town, a lawyer I think, and the man gave me a packet back sealed, and I gave it to Mr. Samuel. And this morning I heard him tell somebody through the study door that the paper was ready. The paper's ready, he said. And then he said... She swallowed. He said once Pierce signs tomorrow, we finish it Thursday. Abigail's heart stopped. Thursday, she whispered. You're certain? Thursday. That's what he said. And Abigail, Molly gripped her arm. He said something else. He said, and if the girls played me false, she goes down with the rest of them. He meant you. I know he meant you. Abigail, what have you done? What are we in? Thursday. Not 2 days from now, 1. Pierce signs tomorrow. The forged note was already in Samuel's hand. And Thursday, he meant to finish it, produce the paper. Produce the doctor's declaration, seize the estate before Caroline or Brooks or anyone could raise a hand. 2 days, Brooks had said. Brooks needed 2 days. They had 1. Molly. Abigail took the frightened girl by both shoulders. Listen to me. You're not wicked. You got tangled in something far bigger than you, and it's not your fault. But I need you now. truly need you. Can you be brave?" I'm not brave, Abigail." "You're braver than you know. Everybody in this house is turning out braver than they knew." Abigail's grip firmed. "I need you to keep carrying Samuel's notes just like you have been. Keep smiling. Keep his trust. And every single thing you carry, every word you hear through that study door, you bring it straight to me first. Can you do that?" Molly's eyes were huge. "He'll kill us if he finds out." "He won't find out, because he thinks he's already won, and a man who thinks he's won stops watching close." Abigail heard her own voice and marveled at how steady it had become. 2 weeks ago, she'd scrubbed floors. Now she was raising a spy inside a spy. "One more day, Molly. Just hold one more day. Will you?" Slowly, Molly nodded. Abigail went to Nathaniel at the first safe hour, and there was no softness left in her, only the hard, clean edge of a person out of time. "Thursday, sir. It's Thursday. Pierce signs tomorrow the notes already made, and Thursday, Samuel means to seize it all. We don't have 2 days for Brooks. We have 1. Nathaniel took it like a blow, and then, God bless him, he did not waste a breath on despair. "Then Brooks finishes tonight," he said. "Whatever state the books are in, he finishes. And we spring the trap Thursday, Samuel's own day. We let him call the men of the county together to witness his triumph, and we turn his own audience into the witnesses of his ruin." His mind was moving fast now, the officer he'd once been surfacing through the sick man. "He wants an audience Thursday. Good. We'll give him one. The bigger the better. Every respectable man he can gather to watch him take this estate, every one of them's a witness who'll see him fall instead. But Pierce, sir," Abigail's voice tightened. "Pierce has turned. He's signing tomorrow that you're unfit. When you walk in. Thursday, Pierce will be standing at Samuel's side, ready to swear you're raving, his word against your wits. Then we turn Pierce back. How he's bought, sir, frightened or greedy, I don't know which, but he's signed his soul over. Not signed. Signing. Tomorrow." Nathaniel's eyes were hard. "There's still a night between. And a bought man, Abigail, is a man who can be bought back, or a man who can be shown the rope waiting for him if he keeps to the wrong side." He thought a moment. "Pierce isn't Samuel. He's not evil. He's a weak man who's let himself be talked into an evil thing and called it medicine. Weak men can be turned if you show them clear enough which way saves their neck." He looked at her. "Someone has to get to Pierce tonight, before he signs. Someone has to make him understand that the man he's about to declare a corpse is wide awake, and that when the truth comes out Thursday, the doctor who signed a false death for a living man is going to hang right alongside the cousin who paid him." Abigail's mouth went dry. "You want me to go to Pierce? I want you to save my life a second time." Nathaniel held her gaze. "You did it with a pillow man 3 nights ago on nothing but your wits. I'm asking you to do it again. Go to Pierce, tonight. Alone. Show him the truth and turn him back before that pen ever touches paper." His voice dropped. "It's everything, Abigail. If Pierce signs, our whole trap could shatter his word, could paint me a madman in front of the whole county. But if you turn him, if the doctor stands on our side Thursday and swears he was pressured to lie, then Samuel's got no medicine and no law and no ground to stand on." He reached for her hand. "I've no right to ask it. You're a maid. This is a fight for lawyers and gentlemen. And here I am sending you into the dark alone to turn a frightened doctor before dawn." Abigail looked down at the master's hand over hers, and then up at his ravaged, hoping face. "You keep saying you've no right to ask, sir," she said quietly. "And you keep asking anyhow, and I keep saying yes." A ghost of a smile. "My mother used to say the Lord puts sharp eyes in humble heads, so the low can see what the high are too proud to look at. Maybe he puts the doing in humble hands too, for the same reason." She squared her shoulders. "I'll go to Pierce, tonight. I'll turn him or I'll die trying." "Don't die," Nathaniel said, and it came out rough. "That's an order, Abigail Turner. Whatever else, come back." She went out into the night alone on foot, 3 miles to town, because a trap could not carry her without a driver who'd talk. She kept off the road when she heard hooves. She was 21 and a housemaid, and she had no business walking into a doctor's house past midnight to unmake a conspiracy, and she did it anyway because there was no one else, because it had always somehow come down to being no one else but her. Dr. Pierce answered his own door in his nightshirt, a candle in his hand, and his face went from irritation to shock to something like fear when he saw who stood on his step. "You're the Harper girl, the maid." He looked past her into the dark. "It's the middle of the night. What in God's name is he dead? Has Nathaniel died?" "No, doctor," Abigail said. "That's just it. He's not dead. He's not dying. And he's not unfit." She held his eyes. "He's awake. He's been awake near 2 weeks. And he heard every word you and Samuel Harper said over his bed. And tomorrow when you put your name to a paper swearing a living, waking, sound-minded man is a mindless corpse." She let it land. "You'll be signing your own indictment, sir. Because Thursday that man is going to walk into a room full of the finest people in this county on his own 2 feet. And every one of them is going to want to know how their trusted doctor came to declare him dead in the mind while he was sitting up talking sense." Pierce's candle trembled so badly, the flame nearly went out. "That's not possible," he whispered. "I examined him. There was no—" He didn't respond. He willed himself still, sir, so he could learn who wanted him dead. And he learned it. He learned all of it, including which doctor Samuel Harper bought. Abigail stepped closer into the candlelight, and her voice dropped to something almost gentle. "I don't think you're a wicked man, Dr. Pierce. I think you're a frightened one who let himself be talked into a wicked thing. There's still a night between you and that pen. You haven't signed yet, which means you're not yet the man who murdered another man's whole life with a lie. Not yet." She held out her hand as though there were something in it, as though she were offering him a door. "But dawn's coming, sir. And when it comes, you're going to be one thing or the other. Samuel's man or an honest one. There's no third road left. Which will you be?" And Dr. Jonathan Pierce, 56, who had buried more of his neighbors than he could count and never once in all those years put his name to a lie, stood in his own doorway. In his nightshirt, with a candle shaking in his hand, staring at a housemaid who'd walked 3 miles through the dark to hand him back his soul. And behind Abigail, out on the black road, a horse she hadn't heard in time came to a slow stop, and a familiar voice spoke pleasantly out of the dark. "Well now," Samuel Harper said, "ain't this a curious hour for a maid to be calling on a doctor?" Abigail's heart slammed once hard, and then went strangely calm, the calm of a person who has already run out of room to be afraid. Samuel swung down from his horse and came toward the doorway unhurried, hat tipped back, his teeth showing white in the dark. "A maid," he said. 3 miles from the house past midnight, calling on the very doctor who's meant to sign my cousin unfit tomorrow." He stopped at the foot of the steps and looked up at the two of them. "Now what could a bought little creature be doing here, I wonder, unless she's not so bought as she let on? Unless she's been playing me the whole while." His voice never rose. That was the terror of it. "I did wonder, Abigail. I told you 2 people breathing in that room. A dying man whose breath sped up under a pillow. I told you dying men don't know things." He mounted the first step. "But I'll confess I hoped I was wrong about you. I did. You've got such a cold, useful little head." "Doctor!" Abigail did not turn, did not look away from Pierce, because she understood in her bones that the whole war would be won or lost in the next 10 seconds right here on this doorstep, and it would be won or lost inside one frightened man's heart. "Doctor, look at me. Not at him. At me. You wanted to know if it's possible Nathaniel Harper's awake. Here's your proof standing on your step. Why else would this man ride 3 miles in the dark to stop me talking to you? If there weren't a truth he's terrified you'll hear." "She's raving," Samuel said smoothly. "Grief and fancy. The girl's half mad. Come away from her, Pierce." "He's paying you to kill a living man with a pen," Abigail said. "And when it comes out, and it will Thursday in front of everyone, he'll swear he never asked it. He'll let you hang alone. You know he will. Look at him, doctor. Look at his face right now and ask yourself if that's a man who'd ever share a rope." And Pierce looked. He looked at Samuel Harper standing on his steps at midnight. Come to silence a servant girl, and Abigail saw it happen. Saw the doubt that had been eating the doctor for days finally tip over into certainty. Saw a weak man find at the very last edge the one hard thing left in him. "Samuel," Pierce said slowly, "why did you ride out here tonight? To fetch a runaway maid before she troubled you with lies? How'd you know she was here?" Pierce's voice steadied as he spoke, gaining ground. "You'd have had to be watching her, following her, in the dead of night." He took a step back into his own doorway. "A man doesn't trail a servant 3 miles unless he's terrified of what she'll say. And you're terrified, Samuel. I can see it plain. God help me, I've been so busy being frightened of you I never once looked to see you were more frightened than I was." Samuel's pleasant mask cracked. "You'll sign that paper, Pierce," he said, and now the cold came through. "You'll sign it, or I'll ruin you. I know about the Whitfield woman. I know why you left Baltimore. One word from me, and there's not a soul in this county lets you near a sickbed again." And there it was, the leash. The thing Samuel had used to buy a decent man. Blackmail. Pierce went gray, but he did not look away. "Then ruin me," he said quietly. "I'd sooner be a ruined honest man than a rich murderer. Get off my steps, Samuel Harper. And take your paper with you. I'll not sign it. Not tomorrow, not ever. And if that living man walks into a room Thursday like the girl says," his voice firmed, "then I'll stand up and tell every soul there exactly what you paid me to do. That's my answer. Now go." For a long moment Samuel didn't move. Then he laughed, a short, ugly sound with no mirth in it at all. "You think this changes anything?" He backed down the steps toward his horse, eyes moving between them. "You think a turned doctor and a lying maid save that estate? You've got nothing. I've got the note. I've got the law. And Thursday, I'll have the land with or without your name on a paper, Pierce. A doctor who confesses he took a bribe isn't a witness. He's a criminal. A maid's word is worth less than the dirt she scrubs." He swung up into the saddle. "You've won yourselves nothing tonight but a place on the gallows beside me. Enjoy it." He wheeled the horse and was gone into the dark. Abigail's knees nearly gave. Pierce caught her arm. "He's right about one thing," the doctor said grimly. "My word's half poisoned now. A bribed man confessing isn't much of a witness." He looked down at her. "But he's wrong about the rest. If Nathaniel Harper truly lives and has his wits, then there's a witness in this county no forged note can touch. Is it true, girl? Is he truly awake?" "He is, doctor. I swear it on my mother's grave." Pierce drew a long breath and seemed to age and steady all at once. "Then get me to him," he said. "Tonight. If I'm to stand up Thursday and tear my own name to pieces for the truth, I mean to look the man in the eye first and know I'm doing it for something real." They rode back double on Pierce's horse in the black hours before dawn, and Abigail brought the doctor up the back stair, and when Nathaniel Harper opened his eyes and said, "Hello, Jonathan. You look like a man who's had a hard night." Dr. Pierce sat down hard on the stool and put his face in his hands and wept for shame and for relief and for the near thing he'd almost done. "Forgive me," Pierce got out. "Nathaniel, forgive me. I nearly signed you into the grave. He had a hold on me, an old business, a shameful one, and I let fear make me a coward. I'd have signed. God forgive me tomorrow, I'd have signed. But you didn't." Nathaniel gripped his shoulder. "You didn't, Jonathan. A maid walked 3 miles in the dark and stood on your step and reminded you what you were, and you found it again in time. That's what matters, not the falling, the catching yourself." He looked at Abigail over the doctor's bowed head, and there was something in his face past gratitude, something close to awe. "She keeps doing that, reminding people in this house what they are. It's a rarer gift than gold." Pierce lifted his head. "Samuel knows now. He saw us together. He'll move fast." "Thursday," Nathaniel said. "Abigail already learned it. He means to seize it all Thursday in front of an audience. Fine, let him." He pushed himself higher against the pillows, more upright than Abigail had seen him in 2 weeks, strength flooding back now that the hour of hiding was ending. Here's the shape of it then. Brooks finishes the true books tonight, every account ready to lay bare. You, Jonathan, you're my proof of mind, a doctor to swear before them all that Nathaniel Harper is sound as any man in the room, and to testify what Samuel paid you to lie. And his jaw set, I'm the dead man who walks in and buries his whole scheme with a single breath. And Mrs. Harper, Pierce asked, does she know any of this? The room went quiet. No, Nathaniel said, and the word cost him. My wife thinks I'm dying. She thinks the maid who's been risking her life to save us all is a paid Judas. She's fought this whole war alone and half-blind, closing every door, selling her mother's pearls, never once knowing her husband was awake to see it. His voice thickened. That's the one wrong in all this I mean to set right before Thursday. Whatever else happens, she's going to know the truth. From me, tonight. He would not be talked out of it. Sir, it's a terrible risk, Abigail pressed. If she reacts wrong, if she cries out, if Samuel's near, I've let that woman carry this alone for 2 weeks, because I was too proud and too suspicious and too afraid to trust her, Nathaniel said, and his voice broke on it. I lay here and listened to her sell my mother's pearls and beg a man she thought was dying not to leave her, and I said nothing. Nothing. Do you know what that's done to me, Abigail? Every hour of it. He shook his head hard. I'll not spend one more night letting her grieve a man who's watching her do it. I don't care about the risk. Bring her to me, whatever comes. So Abigail went to Caroline's door in the last dark hour before dawn and knocked soft, and when the mistress opened it, awake. Of course she was awake. This house didn't sleep. Her face closed like a fist. I've nothing to say to you. I know, ma'am, and I'm not here to be forgiven. Abigail kept her voice low and steady. I'm here to bring you to your husband. He's asking for you. Caroline went very still. My husband can't ask for anything. My husband is... Please, ma'am. Abigail's eyes filled. Just come. Just this once, trust me 1 more inch, and I swear to you on everything holy that after tonight you'll never doubt me again. Come and see him. That's all. Come and see. Something in Abigail's face must have reached her, because Caroline came wary, rigid, one hand pressed to her own throat down the dark hall to the sick room, and Abigail opened the door and stood back and let her go in alone. For a moment Caroline saw only what she expected, her husband on the bed in the candlelight, still and pale. Then Nathaniel opened his eyes and turned his head and said in a voice cracked with 2 weeks of grief and shame and love, Caroline, my Caroline, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, my darling. I've been awake the whole time. The sound Caroline made was not a scream. It was worse, a low, broken cry, the sound of a heart cracking down its whole length, disbelief and joy and fury all at once. Her hand flew to her mouth. She swayed and gripped the bedpost and stared at him like he was a ghost come up through the floor. You're... She couldn't finish it. You're Nathaniel. Awake, aware, all of it. Tears ran freely down his face now. I heard you, Caroline. I heard you sell my mother's pearls. I heard you pay the Aldridge note in my name. I heard you sit at this bed and beg me not to leave you, and I lay here like a coward and let you think you spoke to a dying man. You let me, Caroline's voice tore. You lay there, 2 weeks, while I broke myself, while I sold everything, while I fought that snake alone, believing you were slipping away from me by the hour, and the whole time your eyes were shut and your ears were open, and you said nothing. Caroline, I wept over you. It burst out of her, a fortnight of anguish let loose. I held your hand and told you things I bared my whole soul to a man I thought couldn't hear, and you heard all of it, and you gave me nothing back, not a word, not a squeeze of the hand, nothing. She was crying hard now, furious and shattered. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? Do you know what these 2 weeks have cost me? I know. Nathaniel reached for her with a shaking hand. I know, and there's no forgiving it, and I'll not ask you to. I did it because I heard men behind a barn plan my death, and I didn't know who to trust. God help me, Caroline, for a day, an hour, I even wondered about you. The confession broke out of him raw. I lay here and let myself wonder if my own wife wanted me gone. And I've never been so ashamed of anything in my life, because you were the truest heart in this whole rotten house, and I doubted you. And then I made you suffer to keep a secret I should have trusted you with from the first. He gripped her wrist. You want to hate me. Hate me. I've earned it 10 times over. But hate me later. Because Thursday that snake means to take everything you bled to save, and I need my wife beside me to stop him, and I can't do it without you. I never could do anything without you. That's the truth. I was too proud to know, until I had to lie here and watch you save us all alone. Caroline stood shaking over him, torn clean in half. 2 weeks of grief and rage on one side, and on the other, her husband alive, weeping and gripping her wrist and begging. And then she broke and fell against him and held him, and they wept together. The strong, proud man, and the woman who'd never once let herself be seen to weep in daylight, and Abigail at the door turned away to give them the moment her own face wet. When Caroline finally lifted her head, she wiped her eyes hard with the back of her hand, and something in her had changed. The grief burned off, and underneath it was steel. "All right," she said, her voice raw but level. "All right, you're alive. You doubted me, and you let me suffer, and will have all the rest of our lives for me to make you sorry for it." A wet, fierce laugh. "But Thursday. Tell me about Thursday. Tell me how we bury him." Nathaniel let out a breath that was half a sob and half a laugh. "God, I love you, woman." "Thursday," Caroline said. "How do we win?" And then her eyes found Abigail at the door, and her whole face changed again, understanding crashing over her. "You." Caroline crossed the room in 3 strides. "You knew, all this time, when I called you Judas, when I threw you out of my room, you knew he was awake, and you couldn't tell me, and you stood there and let me hate you to keep him safe." Her voice cracked. "Oh, child. Oh, you poor brave girl. What I said to you." "You had no way of knowing, ma'am." Abigail's throat was tight. "I'd have thought the same in your place, truly. You let me believe the worst of you." Caroline took Abigail's face in both her hands. "You took my cruelty and my scorn, and you never once broke, never once told me the thing that would have stopped it, because telling me would have risked him." Tears spilled over. "There's not a lady in this whole county with the courage you've got in your little finger, Abigail Turner. And I will spend the rest of my days making up for every hard word. I swear it." "Then let's win Thursday first, ma'am," Abigail said, and managed a shaky smile. "And you can start making it up to me after." Caroline laughed through her tears, and for the first time in 2 weeks, the sick room held something other than dread. But the enemy did not sleep, and dawn brought the first of Thursday's terrors a full day early. Brooks came up the back stair at first light, and his face was ashen. "It's gone," he said. "What's gone?" Nathaniel came up straight against the pillows. "The ledger. The true one. The book I've spent 2 weeks building, every account, every cross-check, the whole proof against Samuel's note." Brooks' hands were shaking. "I kept it locked in the estate office. Last night I finished it. Airtight, sir, just like I promised. I locked it away, and this morning the drawers forced and the book's gone." He looked sick. "Samuel. It has to be Samuel. He's known I was working, and last night after he found the girl at Pierce's, he must have... He took it, sir. Our whole proof. Gone." The room went silent with the weight of it. 2 weeks of Brooks's work. The one thing that could stand next to Samuel's forgery and prove it false to the penny. Stolen the night before they needed it. "Then Pierce started. "We're not finished." It was Caroline who spoke, and every head turned. She stood very straight, and her eyes had that new steel in them. "Because Samuel's made one mistake, and it's the same one he's made all along. He thinks the proof lives in a book." She looked at Brooks. "Elias, you built that ledger from your own hand and your own memory, cross-checked twice over 2 weeks. If it burned to ash this minute, could you build it again?" Brooks blinked. The figures are in my head, most of them. I've stared at nothing else for a fortnight. But the paper, ma'am, without the paper, it's just my word." "It's not just your word." Caroline's voice gathered force. It's your word and the bank's records in town, and every receipt I've collected paying off those debts myself these past weeks. I've got every one, Elias, every paid note, every signed receipt from every creditor locked in my own case. That Samuel's never once thought to look in, because he's so certain a grieving woman's box holds nothing but jewels and tears. Her chin lifted. He stole your ledger. He didn't steal the truth. The truth scattered across a dozen honest hands in this county. The bank, the creditors, the receipts, your memory, my case. He can burn one book. He can't burn all of it. And when he lays his forged note down Thursday, we don't need your stolen ledger to break it. We need the bank to say the loan he claims was never made. We need the creditors to say every real debt's been paid. We need you to recite the true figures from memory, and Pierce to swear to my husband's sound mind, and Nathaniel to walk in alive. She was fierce, now magnificent. He thinks he's won because he's got our book. He hasn't got the county. And Thursday, the county's going to be standing in that room. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Nathaniel Harper looked at his wife with his whole heart in his face. There she is, he said softly. There's the woman I married. God, I've been a fool to ever doubt you for a single breath. Yes, you have, Caroline said briskly, already turning to Brooks. Now, Elias, we've got one day. You'll ride to the bank the moment it opens and get their records under seal. I'll gather every receipt and every creditor willing to speak. Abigail. She turned and her face softened. You know this house, and you know Samuel's habits better than any of us now. You'll be our eyes. If he moves early, if he suspects, if anything changes, you'll know it first. Yes, ma'am. Good. Caroline drew a breath. Then we've got a snake to bury. The day that followed was the longest of Abigail's life, a race run in secret under Samuel's very nose. Brooks rode to town at opening and came back near noon with the bank's sealed records tucked in his coat and with news that turned Abigail's stomach. The banker let something slip, he told them low. Samuel's already been to him, days ago, asking careful questions about how a note of debt gets recognized when the borrower's unfit. The banker thought nothing of it at the time. But it means Samuel's been laying this groundwork for weeks, sir. This was never a scheme he threw together when Caroline paid the debts. He's been planning to take this estate from the moment you fell, maybe before. Maybe before, Nathaniel repeated slowly, and a terrible thought moved behind his eyes. Abigail, that first day. The voices behind the barn, the second man I couldn't place. The estate changes hands within the week. He won't last the summer. His face hardened. Samuel didn't just take advantage of my fall. What if he knew it was coming? What if the fall itself? Sir. Abigail's blood ran cold. You mean somebody spooked your horse, on purpose? I mean, I've never in 30 years of riding come off a horse from a sound so ordinary as men talking behind a wall. Nathaniel's jaw worked. I mean, maybe I wasn't meant to overhear a plan. Maybe I was meant to die that morning, clean an accident, and Samuel would have had it all with no games at all, and I ruined his easy murder by surviving it, and he's been scrambling to finish the job through paper ever since. He looked at them all. If that's true, then this isn't a cousin who saw a chance. This is a man who tried to kill me once and means to finish it. And that changes what we're dealing with Thursday. It changes nothing about the plan, Caroline said firmly, though she'd gone pale. It only makes it more urgent that we win. Elias, the bank, records safe. Safe, ma'am. Sealed and on my person. Then guard them with your life. Abigail. Caroline turned. Where's Samuel now? Study, ma'am. Been in there with the door shut since morning. Molly's carried him 3 notes, and there's men coming and going. Abigail's face changed. Ma'am, that's the other thing. He's sending word round the whole county, inviting the respectable men, the magistrate, the 2 Aldridge brothers, old Mr. Coleman, the minister, for Thursday. He's calling them to the house to witness him take up the management of his poor stricken cousin's estate. He's making an audience, ma'am, just like the master said he would. Good. Nathaniel's eyes glinted. Let him fill the room. Every respectable man he invites to watch his triumph is a witness to his fall. He's building the courtroom that'll convict him, and he doesn't even know it. But Abigail's face hadn't cleared. "There's more, sir." The last note Molly carried, she didn't dare open it, but she heard him say something through the door after, to whoever's in there with him. She swallowed. He said, "And make sure the girl and the doctor are both in the house Thursday. I want them where I can see them when it falls. Loose ends don't get to run." The room went quiet. "He means to trap us there," Pierce said slowly. "He knows I've turned. He knows the girl's against him. And instead of trying to keep us away Thursday, he wants us in the room. Because he thinks he's already won," Caroline said. "He thinks his note and his stolen ledger and his law are proof enough, and he wants to break us in front of everyone. Wants the maid and the doctor standing there helpless, while he takes it all and paints us as liars and thieves for our trouble." Her eyes flashed. "He's not planning to survive Thursday. He's planning to gloat." "Then let him gloat." Nathaniel's voice had gone very low and very certain. "Let him fill his room and gather his witnesses and lay down his note and think we're beaten and trapped. Because the moment he thinks he's won, the moment he says the words that damn him in front of the magistrate and the minister and every respectable soul in this county, that's the moment I walk in." He looked around the room at Brooks with the bank's seal over his heart at Pierce, with his reclaimed conscience at Caroline, with her case full of receipts and her spine of steel at Abigail, who'd walked 3 miles through the dark and talked a killer off him with nothing but her wits. He thinks he's got a dead man, a mad doctor, a Judas maid, and a grieving fool of a wife. He doesn't know he's walking into a room with a living master, an honest doctor, the truest maid in Virginia, and a wife who's already beaten him and just hasn't shown him yet. His hand closed into a fist. "Thursday, he lays his lie on the table, and we bury him under the truth, all of us at once." Thursday came. They gathered them without Samuel ever knowing that was Abigail's doing, moving through the house all Wednesday night, like a ghost carrying whispered word from room to room. Brooks with the bank's sealed records. Pierce, who'd sent quiet notes to 2 creditors, asking them to be near the house Thursday on a matter of the master's estate. Caroline's case of receipts moved from her room to a hiding place none of them named aloud. And Nathaniel, who spent Wednesday in secret, working his wasted legs, gripping the bedpost, forcing 2 weeks of stillness out of his body, because when he walked into that room Thursday, he meant to walk in on his own 2 feet tall, no man's hand holding him up. By Thursday noon, the house was filling. The magistrate came grave and portly. The 2 Aldridge brothers. Old Coleman, the minister. Men of weight and standing called to witness a sad necessity, a stricken man's estate passing to steady family hands. Samuel received them in the great front room, gracious, sorrowful, the very picture of a burdened kinsman doing his sad duty. And he'd arranged it all, just so Abigail Maid to stand along the wall like a servant, awaiting orders. Pierce seated among the guests, both of them, where he could watch them. Loose ends, where he could see them. Caroline sat pale and composed her case at her feet. "Gentlemen," Samuel began when they'd all settled, "I thank you for coming. It grieves me more than I can say to call you here on such an errand. My cousin Nathaniel, God keep him, has lain these 2 weeks past all hope, his mind gone unable to speak or know his own name. Dr. Pierce here has examined him." He gestured smoothly. "The estate cannot manage itself. The tenants suffer, and so as his nearest kin, and with the heaviest of hearts I've undertaken to take up its management, and to settle a matter of debt that sadly threatens the whole property." He drew a folded paper from his coat and laid it on the table with great ceremony. "This note, gentlemen, a loan my poor cousin took against this land some months past in the sum of $11,000 unpaid, and now come due. Unless it's settled, the estate is forfeit, and as there's no one left competent to settle it." His voice dripped sorrow. "The law is sadly clear. The property passes to satisfy the debt, to me, as holder of the note." He looked around the room, gathering their grave, sympathetic faces. He looked last and longest at Abigail against the wall, and at Pierce among the guests, the 2 loose ends helpless watching him win. and he smiled small in private just for them. "So you see," Samuel said, "there's nothing to be done. A tragedy, gentlemen. But the law is the law, and the debt is the debt, and my poor cousin can no more speak against it than—" The door at the end of the room opened, and Nathaniel Harper walked in on his own 2 feet. For one long, unbreathing moment, nobody in that room moved. Samuel Harper stood with his forged note still spread beneath his fingers, his mouth half open on the word he'd never finish, and stared at the doorway as though the devil himself had walked through it. The magistrate rose halfway from his chair. Old Coleman made a strangled sound, and Nathaniel Harper crossed the threshold, pale thinner than they remembered, but upright, steady, his eyes clear and hard, and fixed on the cousin who'd measured him for a coffin. "Don't stop on my account, Samuel," Nathaniel said. His voice carried to every corner. "You were saying my poor cousin can no more speak against it. Go on, finish it." Samuel's hand jerked back from the note like it had turned to a hot coal. "You're—" The color drained clean out of his face. "You can't. You're dead. You've been dying for 2 weeks. Pierce examined you. I'm what?" Nathaniel took another step into the room. Mindless, gone, unable to know my own name. He looked around at the gathered men, at their stunned faces. "Gentlemen, you'll forgive the theater of it, but I'll tell you plain why a living man's been playing dead in his own bed a fortnight. It's because on the morning I fell, I overheard 2 men behind my grain barn planning to take this estate the week I died. And when I woke that first night and found half my household already dividing my land, I made a choice. I decided to stay dead a while longer and watch, to see exactly who'd come to feast on a corpse that wasn't cold." His eyes came back to Samuel. "And I saw everything, cousin. Everything." "He's lying!" Samuel's voice cracked as he swung toward the magistrate. "He's raving. The falls addled him. You can see he's not right. He's pale as death. He doesn't know what he's saying." "Dr. Pierce." Nathaniel didn't raise his voice. "You examined me. Twice. You're a physician of 30 years standing in this county. Tell these gentlemen, am I sound of mind?" Every head turned to Pierce, and the doctor rose slowly from his chair, and Abigail saw him find one last time the hard, honest thing she'd walked 3 miles in the dark to give him back. "He's as sound as any man in this room," Pierce said. "Sounder than most." He drew a breath. "And I've a confession to make before all of you, and God forgive me for needing to make it. 2 days ago, that man," he pointed at Samuel, "came to me and offered to bury an old shame of mine if I'd sign a paper declaring Nathaniel Harper unfit. A lie. He asked me to declare a living, waking, sound-minded man a mindless corpse so that he could take this estate. And I very nearly did it." His voice shook but held. "I was a coward. But I'll not be a liar too. Nathaniel Harper never lost his mind for a single hour, gentlemen. And the man who paid me to say otherwise is standing right there with a forged note under his hand." The room erupted. Samuel's face went from white to a mottled red. "You bribed him." He wheeled on Pierce, spittle flying. "You're the criminal here, a bribed doctor confessing his own crime, and you'd have this room take your word. He's a self-confessed liar, his word's worth nothing." "Then take mine," said Elias Brooks. The old bookkeeper stepped forward from the wall, and there was iron in him none of them had seen. "I've kept the accounts of this estate near 30 years, gentlemen. I know every dollar that's come in and gone out of this land better than I know my own children." He fixed Samuel with a look. "And I'll tell you flat, Nathaniel Harper never borrowed $11,000, nor 1,100 nor 11 cents against this property. Not this year, not any year. There is no such loan. That note is a forgery. His word against paper." Samuel snatched up the note and brandished it. "An old servant's memory against a signed, witnessed legal instrument. Which does the law credit, gentlemen? A bookkeeper's fond recollection or a document?" And for a moment, one dangerous moment, Abigail saw the magistrate hesitate, saw the weight of the paper do its old work. A signed note was a signed note. Samuel had been right about one cruel thing all along: paper wins. "Then let's talk about your document, Samuel." Caroline rose. She'd been so still and pale in her chair that half the room had forgotten her, and now she stood, and she was terrible in her calm. She bent and lifted her case from the floor and set it on the table beside his note, with a small deliberate click. "You claim a loan of $11,000 taken some months past." Caroline's voice was clear as a bell. "From whom?" Samuel named the lender. Samuel's jaw tightened. "That's the note speaks for itself. Name the lender." She opened the case. "Because I've spent these past 2 weeks, the 2 weeks you all thought I was gadding about town in my grief, paying off every honest debt this family owed. Every one. In full. And I kept the receipts." She lifted a thick sheaf of papers. Every creditor. Every note. Every signature. The Aldridge note paid, and here are the Aldridge brothers themselves to swear I paid it. She nodded toward the 2 men who nodded back grimly. The Coleman debt paid. The bank's records. She gestured, and Brooks laid the sealed bank documents on the table. Sealed from the bank this very morning, showing every account this estate holds. And gentlemen, nowhere in the bank's own records, in any creditor's book, in any honest ledger in this county, is there one word of an $11,000 loan. Her eyes rose to Samuel's, and they blazed. "Because it never happened. You invented a debt to a lender who doesn't exist on a loan that was never made, and you forged my husband's hand at the bottom of it. Didn't you, Samuel? You—" Samuel was breathing hard now. "You conniving." "Show us the lender," the magistrate said, and his voice had changed entirely. "Mr. Harper, this is a simple matter. If the loan is real, there is a man somewhere who lent $11,000. Name him. Produce him. Show us his records to match your note." Silence. Samuel's mouth worked. There was no lender. There had never been a lender. And every honest ledger in the county now sat on that table sealed and witnessed, screaming the absence of his invented debt. "He can't produce a lender," Nathaniel said quietly, "because there isn't one. You built your whole scheme on my death, Samuel. Every forged figure, every bought word to the doctor, every day you swanned about my house calling for decent coffee, like you already owned it. All of it rested on one thing. Me silent in a bed, unable to say I never borrowed a cent." He walked slowly to the table and looked down at the forged note, then up at his cousin. "And I'm not silent, and I'm not dead. And I'm saying it now in front of the magistrate and the minister and every man of standing you gathered here to watch you win. I, Nathaniel Harper, never borrowed $1 against this land. That note is a lie, and the man who wrote it tried to murder me for an estate." "Murder?" Old Coleman started. "Now that's a heavy word." "It is." Nathaniel didn't look away from Samuel. "And I don't use it light. 3 nights ago this man came into my sick room in the dark with a pillow in his hands and stood over me to smother me in my bed. He'd have done it too. He was stopped by a servant girl who talked him out of it with nothing but her wits." A murmur of horror ran round the room. "And I've wondered since, gentlemen, I've wondered about the fall itself. About a horse I've ridden 10 years spooking at nothing on an open trail on the very morning I overheard my death being planned. I can't prove that one yet. But I'll tell you this. A man who'll forge a note and bribe a doctor and press a pillow to a sleeping man's face, that's not a man who'd balk at spooking a horse." Samuel's eyes darted around the room, now hunting a friendly face and finding none, finding only the hardening faces of the county's most respectable men, the men he'd invited to witness his triumph turning on him one by one. And then he did the thing cornered men do. He lunged for the note on the table, meaning to seize it, to tear it, to destroy the evidence. And Abigail Turner stepped off the wall and put her hand flat on the paper before he could reach it. "No," she said. The whole room stopped. She was 21, plain-faced, a maid in a servant's apron, and she stood there with her small, work-roughened hand pinning a forged note to the table, and she looked Samuel Harper dead in the eye. "You called me your creature," she said low and steady. "You counted your coins into my hand and told me to spy on my mistress, and you thought you'd bought me. You thought a girl with no place and no friends would sell her soul for a wage." Her chin lifted. "But I never was yours, Mr. Harper. Not for one single hour. Every scrap I fed you was chaff. Every night you thought I was watching Mrs. Harper for you, I was watching you for the master. I stood in that sick room door and talked you off him with a pillow in your hands. I walked 3 miles through the dark to turn Dr. Pierce back to the truth before your paper could ruin him. I did it all under your very nose, and you never once suspected, because you looked at me and saw a maid, and you were too proud to think a maid could see through a great clever man like you. She pressed the note flatter to the table. This paper stays right here. As evidence. The magistrate's going to want it. For a moment, Samuel Harper simply stared at her, and every ounce of his composure drained away. And what was left underneath was small and ugly and afraid. You, he breathed. A maid. You did all this. A maid undid me. Yes, sir, Abigail said. I reckon I did. It ended fast after that, the way these things do once the first stone's pulled from the wall. The magistrate took the forged note into his own hands, and the bank's sealed records, and Caroline's sheaf of receipts, and he heard Brooks recite the true accounts from memory and match them figure for figure to the bank's own books. And he heard Pierce swear again before God and the room exactly what Samuel had paid him to do. He heard the Aldrich brothers confirm their note was paid by Caroline's hand. He heard old Coleman confirm the same. And he looked a long while at the note that named a loan no lender in the county had ever made. Samuel Harper, the magistrate said at last, and his voice was heavy as stone. I've known this family 30 years. And in 30 years, I have never seen a fouler thing brought into a room than what you've brought into this one today. Forgery, bribery, and by the master's own account, and this good doctor's attempted murder. He folded the forged note and put it in his own breast pocket. You'll come with me. You'll answer for the note before the law, and you'll answer for the pillow. And if there's a way under heaven to prove what happened to that horse, you'll answer for that too. Bind his hands. Bind. 2 of the men moved to take Samuel, and for one instant he looked wildly toward the door, as if to bolt, and found the 2 Aldrich brothers already standing square in front of it, arms crossed, faces like granite. There's nowhere to run to, Samuel, Nathaniel said quietly. There never was. The moment you laid that lie on the table in front of these men, you built your own gallows. I only had to walk in and let you finish. They took Samuel Harper out of that house in bonds, and he did not go quietly. He cursed and he raved and he swore vengeance. But the door shut on the sound of it, and then there was only silence and the slow letting out of a dozen held breaths. Nathaniel Harper stood a moment in the sudden quiet, and then his legs, which had held him upright through the whole of it by sheer force of will, began at last to tremble. Caroline was at his side in an instant, her arm around him, steadying him. Sit down, you stubborn man, she murmured. You've been on your feet 10 minutes and abed 2 weeks. Sit down before you fall down and undo your grand entrance. In a moment. He caught her hand and held it. There's a thing I have to do first in front of these men while they're still here to hear it. Because it needs saying in daylight before witnesses where it can't be taken back. He turned to face the room. The magistrate, the minister Coleman, the Aldrich brothers, all of them still gathered, all of them watching. Gentlemen, you came here today believing you'd witness a sad necessity. Instead, you've witnessed a crime unmasked. But before you go, I'd have you witness one thing more. He drew Caroline gently forward by the hand into the center of the room, and he faced her. For 2 weeks I lay in that bed and let this woman believe she was watching me die. I heard her sell my mother's pearls to save this family. I heard her pay off every debt we owed with her own hands in my name alone, while a snake circled her, and half the county whispered she was gadding about in her grief. I heard her fight for every soul on this land with no one beside her and no thanks coming. His voice thickened, and he did not fight it. And for 1 black hour in the dark before I knew her heart, I let myself doubt her, my own wife, the truest heart in this house. He lifted her hand to his lips. Caroline, before these men and before God, I say it plain, there is no finer, braver, more faithful woman in this state, and I was a fool 10 times over to ever doubt you for a single breath. Forgive me, and know that everything I have and everything I am is yours, as it should have been from the first. Caroline's eyes filled, but she was smiling the fierce, wet, exasperated smile of a woman who's been through fire and come out the other side holding the hand she started with. "You're forgiven, you old fool," she said softly. "You were forgiven the moment you opened your eyes. But I'll hold you to that. Everything I am is yours. I've a long memory, too." And the hard men of the county who'd come for a scandal and stayed for something they hadn't expected looked away and cleared their throats. And old Coleman blew his nose loudly into a handkerchief and pretended it was the dust. But Nathaniel wasn't finished. He turned, and his eyes found Abigail still standing by the table where she'd pinned the note half forgotten in the shadow of it all the way maids are. "Abigail Turner, come here." She came uncertain, her hands twisting in her apron. "2 weeks ago," Nathaniel said, loud enough for every man in that room to hear, "I asked a housemaid to keep a secret, that's all, just to say nothing of a flicker in a dying man's eyes. And she said to me, I remember it word for word, she said, I can carry it further than you'd think." He shook his head slowly, wonder in his face. "Gentlemen, I did not know then what I was asking or what I was being promised. I did not know that this girl would stand in a doorway and talk a murderer off my chest with nothing but her wits. That she'd let her own beloved mistress call her Judas and throw her from the room and never once break, never once tell the truth that would have spared her, because telling it would have risked my life. That she'd play the spy inside a spy, take the enemy's coin, and feed him nothing but chaff. That she'd walk 3 miles through the black of night alone, a girl of 21, to turn a frightened doctor back to honesty before his pen could bury me." His voice broke, and he let it. "Everything you saw undone in this room today, every thread of it runs back to this girl. Samuel Harper is right about one thing, and one thing only. A maid undid him. This maid. And she saved not just my life but this whole family and every tenant and every soul that depends on this land, because she was too loyal and too brave and too sharp-eyed to do the easy, safe, selfish thing that any other soul in her place might have done." Abigail's eyes were streaming now, and she couldn't have spoken to save her life. "So here is what's going to be, and I'll say it before witnesses so it stands as law in this house." Nathaniel drew himself up. "From this day, Abigail Turner is no maid. She's the keeper of this household, mistress of its running second in this house to no one but my wife, with a wage to match and a place under this roof for the whole of her life if she wants it. And more than that." He looked at Carolyn, who nodded, her own face wet. "There's schooling this girl never had, and a mind that deserved it more than any I've met. If she'll have it, this family will see her taught letters, figures, whatever she wants of learning, because the good Lord put the sharpest eyes in this whole county in a humble head, and it's a sin against him to leave them scrubbing floors." Sir Abigail got out and could get no further. "Don't argue with me, girl. I'm the master of this house, and I've just got my voice back after 2 weeks. Let me use it." But he was smiling, and his eyes were wet too. "You told me once your mother used to say the Lord put sharp eyes in humble heads, so the low can see what the high are too proud to look at." He reached out and took both her hands in his. "She was right, Abigail. And he put a great heart in there too. Thank you. For my life. For my wife. For all of it. There's no wage and no title on this earth equal to what you've done. But I'll spend the rest of my days trying to come near it." And Abigail Turner, who 2 weeks before had scrubbed the floors of that house unseen, stood in the center of the great front room, with the master's hands around hers, and the mistress smiling through tears. Beside him and the finest men in the county, looking on, and she understood that her whole life had turned on a single choice. Made in a dark sick room, the choice to carry a secret further than anyone thought she could. "I only did what was right, sir," she whispered. "Yes?" Nathaniel said. "You did. When it was hardest and cost the most, and no one would have blamed you for doing otherwise, you did what was right. That's the rarest thing in this whole world, girl. And this house will honor it for as long as it stands." In the years that came after, the story was told all through that part of Virginia, growing a little in the telling, the way true stories do. How a great man faked his own coma to smoke out a viper. How a proud wife sold her pearls in secret to save every soul on her land. How a bribed doctor found his conscience on a midnight doorstep. How a forger and would-be murderer was undone in a single afternoon in front of the whole county. But the part people told longest, the part they told their children, was the part about the maid. Samuel Harper went to answer for his crimes and never again set foot on Harperland. Caroline and Nathaniel grew old together, and if he was ever tempted to doubt her again, one look at her face was enough to cure him of it for good. Elias Brooks kept the true books until the day he handed them to a younger man he'd trained himself. Dr. Pierce practiced honestly the rest of his days and never again let fear make a coward of him. And Abigail Turner learned her letters and her figures, and in time she did not merely keep the Harper household, she helped run the whole estate. Her sharp eyes catching what others missed, just as they always had. Years on, when she'd means of her own, she founded a small schoolhouse on the edge of the Harperland, free to any child high or low who wanted learning. And over its door she had carved the words her mother gave her, the words that had carried her through the darkest fortnight of her life. The low see what the proud are too proud to look at. She never forgot where she came from, and the county never forgot her. Because in the end, it was not the great man who saved that family, nor the law, nor the money, nor the land. It was one servant girl who chose loyalty when betrayal was easier, courage when silence was safer, and the truth when a lie would have paid better, and who carried it every step of the way exactly as far as she'd promised she could. And that is why in that corner of old Virginia, when folks spoke of the Harper estate, they did not speak first of the Duke who faked his coma or the wife who sold her pearls. They spoke of Abigail Turner, the maid everyone once ignored, the one who saw the truth when no one else could and was brave enough to carry it home.